a powerhouse accomplisher whose efforts have made a tremendous difference throughout the global healthcare community as well as in his own life. Dr. Chris Stout with us now on Red Hot Healthcare. Let's go.
3 alarm at 21 and north. All engines respond.
This is Red Hot Healthcare. Interviews with today's leaders and all the news that matters. Here's your host, Steve Ambrose.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Steve Ambrose, and you can subscribe to Red Hot Healthcare on iTunes, Stitcher, and other podcast directories. And we love to hear from you. Just send your comments or questions to steve@redhothealthcare.com or hit me up on my Twitter handle, PolymathSteve. Dr. Chris Stout is a licensed clinical psychologist, founding director of the Center for Global Initiatives. He serves as vice president of research and data analytics at ATI Physical Therapy, a national organization heavily awarded and with over 650 locations. But wait, there's more. A clinical professor at the University of Illinois College of Medicine, Dr. Stout has published over 35 books and presented more than 300 papers in more than 20 countries. He is one of only 100 worldwide leaders appointed to the World Economic Forum's Global Leaders of Tomorrow, and he's been presented with 5 international humanitarian awards, plus 4 honorary doctorates. Dr. Stout has appeared on CNBC, CNN, NBC, PBS, NPR, and Oprah. It's an honor to have you, Dr. Stout, and welcome to Red Hot Healthcare.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's a pleasure to be on.
It's really apparent to me, and I'm no psychologist, but you really enjoy challenges and learning as well. And I'd like to know if that was hardwired into you, Dr. Stout. I mean, did your parents play a big role in that, or did you gradually maybe work to acquire that mindset?
Yeah, I guess, kind of a nature nurture, all the above kind of thing. I actually grew up in a divorced household. My folks split up before my first birthday. Kind of had about, kind of the typical upbringing that a child would have in that situation. I periodically saw my father. He was a farmer and about 1,000 miles away from where I live. So I didn't get to see him all that often or experience, doing, a variety of things with him. But the flip side of that was that my mom became very, very, very overprotective. So, that maybe some of the typical kinds of things that kids would do, I really didn't. I had a number of orthopedic problems and things like that with my lower extremities. So I really kind of wasn't very athletic. My mom was terrified if I would have ever gotten a bicycle, that I would, get run over, God knows what. So I think a lot of it, Steve, was probably pent up demand or something for some of the adventuresome kinds of things. And sort of the other part of that was that, when I was a little boy and because of these orthopedic issues and having a very bad sweet tooth, I was very obese as a young boy. And being obese and being named Stout at the same time was also kind of a bully magnet kind of situation. So,
Right.
so it was a little bit of a challenge. And then, sadly, through a health situation with my grandmother, she had about a year-long protracted battle with cancer that she ultimately lost. And through that process, she, we kind of burned through insurance, and then my mother got loans and really kind of I think it's like one of the primary reasons that people kind of get into financial debt and hardship is healthcare costs and stuff today, as well as it was decades ago. And that led to us, we were living with my grandmother, and we had to sell the house to be able to recoup those medical debts after her passing. And one thing sort of led to another, and it looked kind of like it was probably a better idea for me than to go live with my father. So then for the next 10 years, I lived with him on the farm. But before that move, that last year, as my grandmother was being treated and pretty much hospitalized throughout that entire time, every day after school, since my mom was at work, I would spend 2 to 3 hours until she was off work to come pick me up at the hospital. We had a neighbor that would pick me up from school and drop me off at the hospital. So I sort of became the de facto mascot on the oncology ward back at Baylor Hospital in Dallas. And this was in the day where kids really were kind of forbidden from being, in hospitals. One, because of being little petri dishes of germs, but also, being potential, getting into things that they shouldn't get into. But I was rather shy and kind of reserved, and people kind of understood the situation, which was very benevolent on their part. And then hence the mascot. So I got to go to a lot of places that nurses would take me to and doctors would take me to. And I'd hang out in the doctor's lounge, with surgeons and oncologists and whatnot. So at age 12, kind of channeling my inner Doogie Howser or something, I guess, at the time. But I feel like that, all those things, the economic hardship of it, and based upon healthcare costs and the opportunity to hang with the cool kids at the hospital, so to speak, for such a period of time, I think sort of kind of set me on this trajectory, not so much for the adventuresome stuff, but more so for the where I find myself today, working with big data and analytics in healthcare settings, and membership on faculty at a college of medicine, and having spent about 15 years in a hospital healthcare setting as my first job. So I think all those things have kind of come together and conspired to lead to the activities and career that I've been involved with over the last 35 years.
Just to the audience, I want to make mention of this. If you think you're doing a lot in your life, you're not. Because, Chris, I thought I was diverse, and I have to say that you go through a lot of different sectors in business and interests, but just in healthcare, the interests I found include physical therapy, disability, workers' comp, Internet of Things, evidence-based practice, global health, health policy, behavioral medicine, mental health, ethics, and ACOs. And this is all, these are all areas that you have actually written on. You've put position papers out on, you've actually consulted on, you've been a sought out leader on. And I'd like to know how you've managed to stay relevant and wide at the same time.
Oh, thanks. Well, first of all, I have to say, it takes one to know one, Steve, because I think you have a wonderfully diverse, pattern of work and accomplishments yourself. So I take that as very high praise coming from you. Thank you. To speak to some of your points, I think a lot of the convergence, what might seem very, very broad and very maybe, disconnected or not connected or siloed, in my head, I see them as very much connected through a web of looking at the quantified self, Internet of Things, and being able to provide other kinds of services and monitoring and things like that in one's own home, as opposed to the bedside in a hospital, or doing outcome studies 25, 30 years ago, and as did others. And that kind of collaborative work has now become what people then put together evidence-based treatment protocols and treatment guidelines on. And then you take machine learning and artificial intelligence and Dr. Watson, so to speak, and put those things together, and you come up with, better diagnostics. You come up with intelligently enabled electronic medical records that can, presumably, if we're providing better diagnostics, we have more appropriate therapeutics, and we have that all done in a very efficient kind of way that has less wear and tear on the patient and more compliance. So to me, all of those kinds of things, the nonprofit global health side of things, so there's a lot of leapfrogging that goes on where you can sort of take these things that have been proofs of concepts in private practice, so to speak, or in Western medicine, and then look to apply them sort of just right out of the box without having to go through all the turmoil, so to speak, or the struggle of getting things to market, and be able to use them in historically resource poor kinds of areas.
I want to know about the Center for Global Initiatives. First of all, you founded it. I'd like to know why you founded it, and then give us a little idea of what CGI is and maybe what makes it different. Sure.
I'd love to. Thank you. Honestly, and I've written on this on LinkedIn a fair amount, but I kind of refer to it as myself being an accidental humanitarian. I mean, Steve, I would love to sit here and say, you know what? way back when I was in college, I had this grand idea. I mapped out this articulate scheme and I just executed on it perfectly, year by year, project by project. And nothing could be further from the truth. I had no conception of that. I had, a variety of different kinds of changing visions over the course of undergrad and grad school and early career and those kinds of things. And kind of what it took was sort of, I think, three things maybe kind of came together simultaneously. One was kind of back to the climbing. I went on a climbing expedition in 1992 to Kilimanjaro. And one of the porters was a fellow named Alois Uru, who has become just a very, very dear friend. And he was a porter, making his way, earning a wage, carrying material up the sides of mountains with climbers. And he was doing that to fund his tuition to go to seminary. And he and I kept in touch and as literal pen pals, because this was the early 90s. There was no internet. Even once there was internet, there wasn't internet for him in Tanzania. He went through seminary and he then became a chaplain. He was working with kids that were orphaned by virtue of losing their parents to AIDS. And it was just like, he's a friend. And when you have a friend, you figure out what you can do to help a friend out. So we started doing little kinds of things at the hospital that I was working at to kind of send off gifts and things like that. So that was going on. Then parallel to that, I had an opportunity, just because I'd always had this itch I wanted to scratch, to do a medical mission. And I like to travel. I like to climb and things like that. And I went on this mission to Vietnam, and I did it with the Flying Doctors of America. And it was 3 weeks in Ha Long Bay in the Gulf of Tonkin. And the kind of work I did it with, shoulder to shoulder with the people that we were providing services for, as well as shoulder to shoulder with the people we were providing services to, just really, touched me in a way that I felt very much changed. So that's kind of leg number 2 of this CGI stool. And the third leg was then back to one of your comments about the World Economic Forum. I had this opportunity with the work that I was doing with them of presenting and working with these global leaders on projects and things like that collaboratively together, that a number of those folks had started their own NGOs, non-governmental organizations, or 501c3 nonprofits, if they were based in the United States, and they were really doing some amazing, amazing work. And this is one of the few areas in my life where I didn't have like a lot of goals or things really articulated and set up. This was like my kind of, free flowing, go with it, see where things go kind of thing. And I had a mentor that said, unless you want to keep writing checks yourself, Chris, which is kind of what I was doing, of sending money over there and sending materials and things like that. He said, you really need to start a 501c3, because if you have friends that want to support you, which you do, and they have $25, they want to make a donation to the Red Cross, or they want to make a donation to the work that Chris is doing, they may be torn. And the tipping point may be that if they give a donation to the Red Cross, they'll not only be doing something good, but they'll be getting a tax donation. If they do it to Chris, they'll be doing something good, but they won't get the tax donation. So you really need to kind of organize and put this into a 501c3 status. And I said, I have no idea how to do that. He said, call my wife. She's an attorney. He is too. And she'll help put it together for you. So, which was just really, that again was one of these huge pivots and sea changes. So long story short, we did that. Within about a year's time, we got our 501c3 designation. And then that sort of opened up a variety of other doors for funding and for other kinds of benefits and things that, we're able to provide to our donors and kind of scale up a bit for the work that we were wanting to do.
And now a few words from your host. This show's a big part of my life, but my full-time effort is spent in healthcare engagement. And I'm not talking about online portals or some new mHealth app. I'm striving for community trust, growing patient referrals, increasing enrollment, improving adherence, and yes, making sure that the technology you use works with patients. Not because of the technology, but because of the blend between that technology, your company strategy, underlying culture, and that your community knows you're truly on their side. And health technology companies, it's your responsibility too, because providers will start expecting better design, function, lower cost, and even advisory services to help with their results. I'm Steve Ambrose, a surprise you don't see coming. I work with health service providers and IT companies who are not looking solely to manage by numbers or in yesterday's non-engaging models. If you'd like to speak with me, email steveambroseucla@gmail.com. You may also learn more by visiting the About Steve page on redhothealthcare.com. Now you know. And we're back to our show in 3, 2, 1. As far as CGI is concerned, tell us about some of the accomplishments raising funds through that organization.
Everybody on my board, myself, our web designer, the person that houses, the server for our website, all our attorneys, everybody does their work as a volunteer and pro bono. So we all have day jobs, we all have other commitments, we all have other kinds of things, but nevertheless, do what we can do to be able to move the work on with CGI. And one of the things that goes right back to the climbing and sort of a tip of the hat to my friendship with Alois was that when I have gone on subsequent climbs, every one of those climbs has been as a fundraiser. I thought, to raise awareness as well as raising funds and to make this kind of a bit more of a communal kind of thing, let's commit every climb to being a fundraiser. So that's been fun. We've had other people join us on climbs. We've had some people say, I'll pay you $10 for every, meter that you climb, so it's been kind of a neat, community building, fun kind of thing. But we have learned a lot of things that can help other people be able to scale their work or their projects or start their own 501c3s. So what we then did was sort of recalibrate our website to be a place where people can come totally free of charge and download books, download chapters of books, we have a very robust Excel spreadsheet that people can download and keep for themselves and edit to their heart's content that talks about fundraising, volunteer management, board development, the technical stuff of having a 501c3 from the tax issues to building your website kind of a thing. And just in ways to have discounted travel for humanitarian airfare. We've got 82 different courses on global health with a partnership through another vendor that are all available for free 24/7. Just kind of everything that we could kind of think of. And when we think of something new or someone asks us for something that we don't have yet that we can get a hold of, then we'll add that to it. So we really sort of want to be this Johnny Appleseed of humanitarian work where people could come and we're not doing anything that someone else couldn't do. There's no, secret sauce, so to speak, but it's just the fact that we've done it so other people don't have to do it. So now we've become this accelerant. You could spend months on Google and figure out all the websites and links and whatever's that we've been able to do, but we've already done that for you. So now you can just get to work on the project that you want to get to work on and not have to spend all that, remarkably frustrating, mind-numbing time doing all that background research.
Open source humanitarian intervention, is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's hard enough to do the work that you want to do or to do the work that you're doing in the humanitarian space. There's umpteen challenges, there's politics, there's corruption, there's expense, there's time, there's kind of you name it. There's, just a lot of need out there. We're not doing this to make money because we already have our day jobs to pay the mortgage and the pediatrician. So, Steve, there's a lot of people that really have no interest whatsoever in starting a 501c3, but have a burning passion to do work in a specific area on a specific topic around a specific thing. And they don't say, hey, gosh, I have this passion to put together a board of directors. I have this passion to, load up a website full of content. No, right. They don't. They have a passion to work with someone that they've met or that they have some kind of, the collegial relationship with or whatever it is that's gotten them to have an interest in the work or the area that it is that they're doing. They don't want to be slowed down. They don't want to be, tied up with all the bureaucratic red tape and hassle and whatnot to be able to do the work they want to do. So our idea is to be able to open source that material, be an accelerant for them and help them do the work that they want to do, which then makes us feel good because then we feel like, in a sense, we're sort of scaling by proxy.
I do want to ask this question because I think that it's important and it goes towards perhaps the psyche and motivation, but maybe in just a few sentences, what is it about humanitarianism that attracted you to dedicate your life towards it?
Wow. Great question, Steve. I guess, there's almost sort of a mercenary aspect to it, believe it or not. It's such the feeling of helping someone, or the feeling in particular of helping someone that you care about or that you know, or that's like I keep mentioning, that's a friend. Everybody that I've worked with on a project, I have stayed with, I have broken bread with. I might have, stayed at their home, or, I mean, it's like, it's a friendship. It's, I've spent, deeper times and deeper kinds of things with some of the people that I've worked with internationally than, people that are my friends, here within 20 miles of where I'm sitting today, kind of a thing. But, a great outlet for creativity. It's it feels good when I do it. And it's just, I get a lot of endorphins, I guess, in the process of doing it.
Yeah. So I take it with your free time, you're not a Bachelor watcher or a Netflix watcher.
No, that's one of my omissions. Yes, I'm totally worthless when it comes to what the scores were over the weekend or anything like that. I'm worthless on a Monday morning of hey, did you see this or did you see that or how about that game? So that's one of my deficits. Absolutely.
On our website, we are going to have a link to CGI, to the Center for Global Initiatives. I think it's an important organization, and I think it'd be great to introduce the listeners to that as well. And once they go on the site, certainly they're going to be able to take advantage of all different options. So I would encourage our listeners to do that for sure. I would be remiss if we didn't get into you're spending 10 days in a Bolivian prison. There's no way we get through this interview without you talking about that. So,
oh yeah, you had to bring that up.
Yeah, jump right in. The water's warm. Jump right in.
Yeah. Flying Doctors had developed a relationship with an NGO in Bolivia because it's very hard for American-based NGOs to do humanitarian work in Bolivia for whatever cultural or political or whatever kinds of reasons. And I'm thinking, okay, well, that, I'm game. Let's go see what that's like. And as our team met in the United States before we headed south, I was meeting OBGYNs and I was meeting pediatricians, and I was kind of scratching my head going, am I in the right place? What do we got? What's the deal? And I found out that we were going to a men's prison and 2 women's prisons. So that explained the OBGYNs. But what's the deal with the pediatricians? And then I learned that in Bolivia, as strange as this will sound, if you're a parent and you have children and there's no one at home to take care of your children and you've been sent to prison, your children come with you.
So if
you are a woman and you're in a minimum security prison, then your kids and these are all urban prisons in the capital city, La Paz, a very, very urban area. Your kids leave the prison and they walk to the local school, just like if you lived in an apartment that was whatever school district that your kids would go to, and your kids go to school and your kids come back to the prison, aka home, and do their homework or whatever with you and blah, 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 just that mom can't go. If you're a mother in a maximum security prison, your children can't leave. Those doors do not open very often. So they actually have to have teachers be in the prison. So, Steve, it was the most surreal kind of thing to be in, you let your imagination go with what a Bolivian prison looks like. But we had this little 2 teachers in this little classroom. And we, kind of during our downtimes, during our breaks, we'd go play with the kids. And the medications that we brought would be in pill bottles, but the pill bottles would be in boxes. And they said, if you don't mind, rather than throwing away the boxes when you're, use the pill, taking the bottles out or use the medications, could we save those boxes? Because we'd like to use those like for stacking toys. And I thought they're going to use pill boxes for substitute for blocks because that's how poor they are. Oh. They don't have money for educational materials. They don't have money for toys or whatever. It's bad enough in the educational system outside of a prison, but then just amplify that tenfold of what it's like to have funding, inside a prison. And the social status, so to speak, of the guards and of the teachers is very, very low. And we were treating the guards because they stay there in bunks, just like not 24/7, but they stay, for long periods of time, almost like how, firefighters would or something like that in the firehouse. So we were treating them just as we were treating the inmates, so to speak. And the men's prison, I'm blocking on the name of it. Hopefully I'll remember it before we finish. San Pedro. So if you type in marching powder in a Google search or San Pedro, it's sort of the most infamous prison, one of the most infamous prisons in the world. because when you go there, and I should have said this, it's the same with the women's prison. When you get imprisoned in Bolivia, it's not like in the United States where you get your 3 hots and a cot, so to speak, in your cell, which doesn't sound very luxurious. But in Bolivia, you get 2 meals a day and you get no cell. So you say, well, where do you stay? Well, you stay in the courtyard, or you make a deal and get a roommate, or you do something. So what happens in the men's prison, the men come in and they bring their entire families. So their wives are there, their kids are there, and the kids go to school during school hours. Their wives may have work, so they then go to their job. And then in the evening, everybody comes home, so to speak, at the prison. You, just like you would buy a condo or you would rent a condo, that's how people get to stay in their rooms. So some guys will partner up 2 or 3 or 4 people and get money from the outside or whatever. There'll be some guys that create crafts. There'll be another guy in his cell. He had a Xerox machine. So that was his business. He Xeroxed papers for people. There were 3 restaurants, Steve, that were totally manned and managed by inmates. Yeah, it was just the most unbelievable thing. So we're providing medical services. So there's a doctor that comes there to each prison one day for a piece of the day a week, but you pay for that care. And let's say you've got your last peso to pay for seeing this doctor, and then he says you need this antibiotic. You're now out of luck in a different way because you have no money to buy the antibiotic because he's not going to give you a sample, and there is a pharmacy, but the pharmacy is not free. So you, just like if you went to the local Walgreens, you would have to pay for your prescription. Well, you have to pay for your prescription in the prison as well. There is nothing except the 2 meals that are ever covered when you're in this prison. My coup de grace of this entire bizarre kind of Twilight Zone experience was that I contracted dysentery while I was there. So I can tell you, Steve, dysentery would be bad like on Miami Beach, or whatever the best vacation spot in the world would be. But in a men's prison, having to go to the men's kind of quasi-public restroom, prisoner's restroom, without any kind of guards or any other kind of supervision, and wondering if the lock on the door is working really well was not the most pleasant of experiences. And I became a true believer in the power of Cipro during that experience.
Thank God for Cipro.
Exactly. Better living through chemistry. So
right, exactly. Oh my goodness. Well, I wanted to, as a final question here, if you had to give one piece of advice to people in general, people who know that they should be helping more, doing more. Maybe they make excuses not to pull the trigger. Oh, I'm too busy. I've got this, I've got that. But what would be your one piece of advice?
The advice would be, and then I'll back it up with why. The advice would be just like, paraphrasing from Nike, just go out and do something. Just go do it. At the local level, like me working with Alois, I mean, it was a friend helping a friend. That's kind of all it takes. You don't need a big superstructure. You don't need $1 bazillion. You don't need a grant from the Gates Foundation. You don't need any of those things to be able to create a positive impact in just one person's life. And that impact doesn't have to be some huge, complicated, articulated, time-consuming kind of thing. And I oftentimes in talks will refer to it as the pox of the untils. And I think people sometimes suffer from this. And this is the point, I think, of your question, that they wait until, well, I'm going to wait until I graduate, or I'm going to wait until I pay off my student loan, or I'm going to wait until I get married, or wait until I get divorced, or wait until I pay off my mortgage, or wait until I retire. And after these years and years and years accumulations of excuses of waiting until, then lots of opportunities to have been helpful to other people, lots of opportunities to have been able to make that difference in the world now may be, absent. Now it may be the time where someone comes to help you, sort of a thing. So to just really not wait, that there's, no matter what scale, no matter how small someone says, oh, well, that really won't make any difference. I would challenge them to say it will make a difference. And it doesn't. A little difference is just as important as a huge difference. Scale does not matter. A difference is a difference.
How can people reach the Center for Global Initiatives? We're going to have a link on our site. Is there a phone number they can call or an email they could reach out to our website? If you can just give that over our interview, that'd be great.
Easiest ways to use our tools right off the bat is go to centerforglobalinitiatives.org. Always open 24/7. We never close. If people would like to be in touch with me, they can reach me through my website, which is simply drchrisstout.com. There's a little place there where you can put in your email address, and people can follow me at Dr. Chris Stout on Twitter. And I do a pretty prolific amount of blogging and sharing curated content as a LinkedIn influencer on LinkedIn.
Dr. Chris Stout, I want to thank you. It's been a privilege and a pleasure having you on Red Hot Healthcare.
It's been my privilege. Thanks a lot, Steve.
You've been listening to Red Hot Healthcare with Steve Ambrose. Subscribe to us on most major podcast directories. For media or business inquiries, reach out to media@redhothealthcare.com. Thanks for listening. This is Denny Colonna. We're out of here.